Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Alan Weiss, who is the medical director of Annapolis Integrative Medicine right here in Maryland. He received his bachelor's degree from the University of Virginia and his medical degree from McGill University. He is board certified in internal medicine, and he is also a senior program leader for the Landmark Forum. I took my advanced course with him this past September, and I'm excited to have him on board with this project where I introduce various doctors from around the world to discuss different perspectives on health and wellness and allow people who don't have access to healthcare to have a little bit of an access to doctors around the world. So please welcome Dr. Alan Weiss.
Thank you. Thanks, Alice. Dr. Fong.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Good. Oh,
Happy to be here.
Oh, thank you for being part of this.
My pleasure.
Wonderful. So how did you get into integrative medicine?
Well, I was a board certified internist working in a typical internal medicine practice, first in Boston and then down the road from here. And it was interesting because how I ended up moving from Boston to Annapolis was I met two doctors in the Amazon in Peru who were working down here. We hit it off. They offered me a job to come down here. And one of the doctors was a pretty typical internist, great guy, but a pretty typical internist. And the other one was practicing holistic and integrative medicine at the same time as he was practicing internal medicine. And I began to see, well, the first thing I noticed was I had so many patients who were on 5, 10, 15 medications. Right. And all I was doing was writing prescription after prescription after prescription after prescription. And especially, we used to be able to write a bunch of prescriptions on one prescription. Then it had to be all on different prescriptions. And my hand was getting tired, for one thing.
That makes sense.
But I also began to see that with these patients, there were really two paths they could go on. Number one is to keep with the same lifestyle that they were on, and the future would hold probably more and more prescriptions, more and more side effects, right, pretty much until they died. Or some intervention could be done in their lifestyle, diet, exercise, all at the aspects of their lifestyle, and begin to whittle down and get them off some of their prescriptions. So I began to explore that type of medicine, and eventually moved out into my own practice to do so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
And I began to see that, all doctors are well-intended, right, but at the same time, in the typical world of internal medicine, it's one patient after the next patient after the next patient without having much time to really sit down and understand what was going on with people. And our schedules were so booked that if somebody came in for this problem, but they wanted to talk about this problem and this problem and this problem, the only thing on my mind was how far behind I was getting.
Exactly.
So I crafted a practice where I could, I see patients, I schedule patients for at least half an hour at a time, so I could give them the kind of attention that they need, and I, sit with them on this couch and talk to them and find out what's going on.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what kind of conditions do you commonly see and treat here?
Yeah. So I started out treating a lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, which are these kind of chronic either fatigue syndromes or pain syndromes. But I do a lot of treatments of hormonal disorders, both women going through menopause or younger women going with polycystic ovary syndrome. I see a lot of people with adrenal gland disorders and thyroid gland disorders. And I especially see a lot of people who have thyroid issues with normal laboratory testing. Mm-hmm. And I've had so many patients who, if you give them a trial of thyroid hormone, even though their levels, their tests look normal, it can make such a difference. I see a lot of men with low testosterone levels. A lot of people have sleep disorders too, and a lot of people have all kinds of symptoms that treating those symptoms make no sense and doesn't really make much of a difference until you actually get to an underlying sleep disorder, and it's really common, be it sleep apnea, or people with these people who grind their teeth all night,
yeah,
but their brains aren't. People who grind their teeth and have vivid dreams, they're not sleeping,
I'm sure.
you know, and they feel like crap all day, you know, and until you actually ferret that out and find that that's there and deal with it, not a lot you do is going to make much of a difference. They'll continue to be tired, et cetera, et cetera. I see a lot of people with gastrointestinal issues. I'm sure all the same kind of people. You see all this stuff too, right?
Yes.
I see a lot of people with food allergies. I see a lot of people with leaky gut issues. Stuff like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth. You know, and treating those issues can really make a big difference in just how people feel day in and day out. I see people with weight issues, and a lot of intestinal issues give rise to weight. All these things, it's like a big mishmash, you know,
Right.
you have to deal with all of it.
Yeah. In a lot of ways. Yeah. Thank you. And as you know, there's millions of Americans that don't have access to healthcare right now.
Right.
Some who haven't ever seen a doctor or haven't seen a doctor in years, and you see the country as a whole getting sicker and sicker.
Yeah.
More chronic diseases are becoming more prevalent.
Yeah.
How do you think that came to be, and what do you think we need to do to change that?
Well, I think as medicine got more institutionalized, systematized, I think it became normal for for doctors to specialize, subspecialize, and subspecialize. So you have doctors who, orthopedists who just do elbows or just do shoulders or just blah, 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 like that. And so in medical school, you're not trained to treat the whole person, to listen to the person. And I think our system has been geared towards waiting till people are ill as opposed to fostering wellness from the beginning.
Right.
So we've got a system that's pretty good at treating people who are critically ill, with cancer, heart disease. But those don't, if somebody has a heart attack, it's not like the day before their arteries were clear and all of a sudden they have a problem.
Exactly.
If all of a sudden you have cancer, it's not like the day before you were diagnosed there was no cancer.
Right.
So I think, there's a number of factors, the financial issues with hospitals, healthcare, the pharmaceutical industry, how doctors are trained. I think it's also, people aren't trained to really engage in wellness. We live in an environment, our nutritional environment, I think, is a lot to blame too, with fast food, processed foods. Yeah. We now live in a unique time of human history where we can literally get in our car, not get out of our car, go through a drive-through window, get a 1,000-calorie meal, and eat it in our car.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an odd, a unique. It's like we're doing an experiment on ourselves. Our genetics are the same, our, biology is the same as it was 1,000 years ago, but what we're doing to it is really different with all the sugar available, processed foods available. So, the rates of obesity, all that stuff is adding up to a environment where people can get sicker and sicker and not get the kind of health care that they need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agree completely, 100%. So for those people who have never seen a doctor or haven't seen a doctor in years, if you could offer a piece of advice to them, what would that be?
Well, I would recommend that people maybe start with their diet. And most people have access to the internet, do something like the Whole30 diet or some kind of elimination diet. Maybe take a month and get rid of some of the biggest culprits like sugar. A lot of people don't handle wheat very well or dairy. Yeah. So doing a diet like that, especially if you just, if you're not sick, right? If you just maybe you just don't feel great or your energy's low, the things that to look at for sure are your sleep patterns. If you're not sleeping, you're getting enough sleep. If you don't sleep, you're not going to be well. Your diet and doing something like a elimination diet or a Whole30 diet. There's many of them out there, some kind of clean eating for a month and see how you feel by doing so. I'd recommend getting some blood work done, to see what's going on, and probably probably find a doctor or, a provider, that you can click with and will work with you, and somebody that'll listen to you.
Right.
And, work together, because nothing gets easier, right, for people. And the longer you wait, it's kind of like, if you don't open up your credit card bills, it doesn't mean you don't owe money, right? So,
yes.
Not dealing with what's going on, like, why does that hurt? Why do I feel this way? Is unlikely to have that thing go away. And often the earlier you deal with something, the better of a chance you have to improve it, maybe even get rid of it. So I would do that. Let me see if there's anything else. So, maybe just taking a good multivitamin. Most people need some vitamin D, fish oil, a good probiotic, usually can't hurt, might really help people. And then there are habits. We all have, certain things that become habitual. Smoking's an obvious one, maybe drinking too much alcohol, but for sure eating too much processed food, sugars, etc. Getting some exercise, at least going out walking, and eventually maybe getting your heart rate up, stuff like that can really help. So, do what you can on your own, but try to find a doctor that you can work with and will listen to you.
Absolutely. Great. So my final question for you today is, how did you become involved in Landmark, and what has the impact been on your life since?
Well, I did the Landmark Forum myself in 1994, and I did it because I was at a stage in my life where I'd finished my residency, finished medical school, was finally working as a quote-unquote real doctor. And I experienced, I've gotten where I've been working to get for all these years, and, that's fine, except I still experience, there's something not quite right for me, And the truth of the matter was, I had a lot of resentments in my life. Blaming others for anything that I wasn't happy about in my life. And for me, those weren't connected. I knew I wasn't quite happy. I knew I was blaming people, but I didn't quite connect the two. And a friend of mine who I really trusted just told me about the forum and said, you should go do it. So I did it because he said, go do it. That's the only reason I did it. And out of being in the forum, I regained my access to being happy. I completed my relationship with my father, who was the main person who I'd been resenting. And I walked out of there experiencing being free, being happy, and really able to create my life. And I continued with the curriculum for living that Landmark provides, and saw in the other programs, especially the advanced course, the possibility of the transformation of really what it means to be a human being. And I decided to become somebody who made that education available in the world, and got trained to be a seminar leader and a forum leader. And I spent about 6 years just being a forum leader. I wasn't even practicing medicine for those years. And then I came back and combined the two, which is what I do now. So I still lead the teen forum, the Landmark Advanced course, and I have a pretty full-time medical practice here. So I've been able to use what I've learned as a doctor and as an integrative specialist and as a forum leader, and really make a difference in different ways for people in the world.
Wow, that's really powerful. Amazing. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a trip and a gift.
Yes.
A real opportunity for me.
For me too, definitely. All right, thank you, Dr. Weiss.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
It was a wonderful time getting to spend time with you.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.